Welcome back to another episode of Create a New Tomorrow. I am your host, Ari Gronich. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, comment below so that we can start conversations that matter and help you create a new tomorrow today. I've got with me today Richard Flint. He is a 30 plus year veteran of the lecturing circuits. He is the author of over 19 books and has great ability to adapt, adjust, align in these changing times. He just opened up a learning center this last week. So, Richard, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to be who you are, and why are these people listening to you?
All right, we live in interesting times right now, where people are being challenged at a level that they've never been challenged before. And if you had asked me 30 plus years ago what I would be doing with my life today, I'd probably have told you that I would be teaching at some university. Uh, I- and with my education, I did my undergraduate work in English and speech. I have a master's in ethics, and then I have PhDs in philosophy and psychology. Uh, when I finished graduate school, I went and taught at Ohio University for a couple of years and then moved to Wayne State University in Detroit and left there and went to the staff of First Baptist Church in West Palm Beach, Florida, a very large church where I ran the counseling division for them. Uh, Church had some internal struggles. I left there and ran a private counseling center in the Palm Beaches for several years. And while I was doing that, I wrote some magazine articles that got some international attention. And I started getting groups that would ask me, would you come share your philosophies with us? Because I'm known for my philosophies. And I did that on a limited basis for a year and a half. And then I woke up one morning and realized this was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that was 32 years ago. And for the past 32 years, I have traveled this globe, uh, sharing my philosophies, my thoughts, my ideas, my processes with people. If I've been given one gift in life, it's the ability to take what looks confusing to you and show you the simple process to get to the other side of it.
Yeah, I have these conversations a lot with my 7 year old. It's kind of interesting about choices and about what we choose to do and the results that come from it. You mentioned we're in changing and interesting times. I think that pretty much every time period is interesting times to the people who live in them. I've always said that madmen are, or geniuses are madmen to the societies they live in. It takes generations before they get recognized as the geniuses that they are. And so it's interesting. I don't feel like we live in changing and interesting times. I feel like it's an extension of what we've already created. And my philosophy, as you say, is that we made this shit up and we could do better. Everything we see is a figment of our imagination. We created it in our mind. And what I'm hearing you say is that we can easily, readily use that imagination and use our mind to shift our perspectives and adapt and change and adjust to the world that we see in front of us.
Well, you and I, every day, the choices that we make are based on which direction we choose to live. We either live from our emotions up or our mind down. And if I live from my emotions up, then I sort of limit my ability to think because from my emotions up, I'm going to react. Because from my emotions up, the foundation of my life is about me doubting, worrying, and feeling uncertain. And when I have those three as the foundation of my living process, then I'm going to react to everything that happens.
So let's like unpack this a little bit because I think a lot of people would say that living in your mind is basically living in a figment of your imagination, of what's not reality, and your emotions are what tell you, you know, what the truth is. So whether you're passionate about something or whether you're angry about something, it tells you kind of the path of your resistance versus your mind, which may logically have all the numbers in place, but there's something not right. And if you don't listen to that other, then you can get lost. So let's unpack this so that people know what we're kind of talking about, what you're talking about, so that there's more clarity to that and how to implement that into somebody's life.
My mind is a sketch pad, and my mind, everything that I have created with my life began as a thought that I began to process, and I've sketched it out. Um, I'm a collector of hand carved wooden ducks, and several years ago, I was in Big Bear, California, doing a program, and the lady who had brought me in to speak to her company says, "I'm going to take you over and show you something." So she took me over to a carving studio of a gentleman that's what he did. He carved hand carved wooden ducks. So we were talking. He said, "I want to show you something." So he took me into his studio, and on the table was a block of wood. He said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "I'm looking at a block of wood." He says, "I'm looking at a duck." I said, "I'll buy it." Because if we lose our imagination, then we lose our ability to see forward. But if I'm strong mentally, I can work through the emotions.
That's interesting, and I like what you're saying, because obviously this show is called Create a New Tomorrow, and in order to do that, you have to leave yesterday behind. I do have a firm belief that you have to learn from yesterday in order to properly leave it behind. However, that's kind of the idea. So let's break apart. Today is not yesterday. This sentence that you placed in here. Today is not yesterday, and we must be willing to do what needs to be done to prepare. So let's break apart that sentence into actionable things that somebody can actually do rather than just the concept.
Okay. First thing is my definition of yesterday. Yesterday is a reference library, not a room to live in. And you and I, Ari, we've both known people who have chosen to live in yesterday because of their fear and from the day I was born to the day I die. I'm going to battle 6 fears, and one of these 6 is going to be my number one fear. And if I don't control my fear, then I become a hostage to yesterday. There is no fear in today until I bring it out of yesterday. You've got the fear of the unknown, which is rampant today. I mean, the people I'm talking to, they're challenged because they're used to having this routine of their life, and they're used to being able to control their life. But all of a sudden, that's sort of been removed from them. So if I take that away, then they're looking at an unknown, and there's fear in that. There's the fear of abandonment, that I'll be left. There's the fear of rejection, that people aren't going to like me. The fear of failure, which is huge. The fear of loss, which is all about price tag you're willing to pay. And then there's the fear of success, which to me is the number one fear with young people today.
When you're talking about leaving yesterday behind, but using it as a reference library, how many people and I know that will get an emotional trigger from a story, right? So they'll read a book, fiction, we'll call it a fictional book. They'll read a fictional book, it'll evoke their emotions. They'll feel angry, they'll feel sad, they'll feel love, they'll feel all kinds of feelings, right? From listening to that story. So the question becomes, how do you turn a reference library into something other than a place to go have a pity party?
Well, a lot of that depends on what I'm looking for. I read a book the other day, and it was an emotional book, and I found myself with emotions. And when I finished the book, The question I ask myself is, what triggered these emotions? And what triggered the emotions in there was the story that reminded me of my childhood, which opened up a world of feelings. And the way that I was handled that is I've already worked through those emotions. Most people accept yesterday, they don't challenge yesterday. And if you never challenge yesterday, then it's difficult to learn from yesterday.
That was really fascinating, and I appreciate that. We're talking about working from mental down, mind down. That doesn't necessarily, mean that you're not utilizing your emotions,
Correct.
right? And so if you're not necessarily utilizing them as a hindrance, you're using them as a tool. How do you begin using the emotions that typically would be to tear down to build up? So things like anger and frustration and rage and all those things. How do you use those to your benefit versus your destruction?
Well, you got to know where those emotions are coming from. Most of the emotions, the emotions that you will experience in a day, are coming from some experience from your yesterday that you've never dealt with. I believe that anything you don't complete in life has continuation. And when I was in the world of doing counseling, people would come to me and they would be angry, but they didn't understand where their anger was coming from. So what we did, we would have to find the beginning point of that anger. They never dealt with it. And if you don't deal with negative emotions, all you do is increase their power in your life. And once we can find and locate where that anger is coming from, then we can work there.
Are your programs going to be evergreen? Are you turning them into evergreen programs? And the reason I ask that is I don't know exactly when your episode is going to air. And so I just want to make sure that the information is either going to be retroactively available for them if it's evergreen or not. I just want to make sure that they have the option of finding that. So are you going to turn that into an available recording?
Yes, we record everything we do. It will be there.
Okay,
Um,
awesome. That way, in case this is after January, um, we we don't losing anybody, in translation, so to speak. We don't want to lose anybody in translation. So
yeah,
uh,
if they'll go to richardflint.com, everything they need to know about me is right there.
awesome. Very nice. Thank you so much for being here, Richard. This has
Well,
been
thank you.
another episode of Create a New Tomorrow. I am your host, Ari Gronich, and we will create a new tomorrow today, every day, and activate our vision for a better world. Please do remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, comment so that we can start conversations that matter and help you to create your new tomorrow today.